we're going to start with a little introduction from Guillaume about what the municipal program is, and then we will open the floor to questions. I think the easiest way to do that, if everyone can see the chat box, is if you just send me an indication that you want to speak, and then we'll go in order of speaker through the chat box. S'il y a des gens qui n'ont pas tout compris ça, on va commencer avec Guillaume qui va faire la présentation, et puis ensuite on va ouvrir le plancher aux questions. Si vous voulez parler, m'envoyez un petit message dans le chat, et nous allons procéder en ordre d'apparition. Ça marche? And so everyone knows this meeting is being recorded, so anything you say can and will be used against you. So it will be available on our channel subsequently.
Yeah.
Okay, donc allons-y.
Écoutez, bonjour tout le monde, puis je sais pas on a combien de temps. Moi, je suis pas pressé, là, on va prendre le temps qu'il faut. So, hi everyone, I don't know how much time we have, but I'm in no rush and we'll take the time that it takes. Puis je vous dis tout de suite, c'est un grand pas pour la municipalité, donc il est fort probable, en fait, c'est définitif, il y aura d'autres séances d'information comme celle-là, puis des séances d'information qui vont probablement être pilotées par la firme avec laquelle on travaille. Donc, to put it out there immediately, know that I'm happy to do this today, but it is obvious for me that throughout the next year, there will be other occasions, other information sessions, and with people that are more qualified than me to speak about the subject, namely Solinov, like representatives from Solinov, the Quebec firm we're working with, who's been accompanying us since early 2019 in all of this this project. Puis là, je sais pas, j'ai l'impression qu'il y a qu'on est il y a peut-être plus d'anglophones qui sont ici présents. Ce qui est moyen, peut-être, Jillian, de savoir, est-ce que je m'exprime en français, en anglais, comme je vois Bobby Lee qui est francophone, je connais Bobby Lee. Est-ce que tout le monde comprend le français? Does everyone speak French and understand French? Should
I think I have the impression, Guillaume, just based on the conversations prior to this meeting, that there were a lot more anglophones who were interested in this topic. Maybe s'il y a quelqu'un qui préfère que la réunion se tienne en français, est-ce que vous pouvez vous manifester et envoyer un petit message dans le chat ou quelque chose comme ça?
C'est bon. Je vois que Bobby Lee dit que l'anglais, c'est correct. Puis comme je le disais, là, il va y avoir d'autres séances comme celle-là en français, puis des séances officielles faites par la municipalité, puis toutes sortes de communications par la suite. Fait que je vais passer à l'anglais, si vous me permettez. So I'm happy to be here today, and I think of the role of people who are, you know, let's say compost enthusiasts like myself. I think we have a role as ambassadors when it comes to the project that the municipality is taking on. And while I understand that some people may have come at this from a very, I'd say, closed, you know, like a kind of set, you know, position, I think we need to really think about this, and it's good because we have the tools to do so. We have namely a report, but a whole process that's been taking place that's quite comprehensive and data-driven and intelligent. So the first thing I'll do is I'll go back into the different steps that the municipality has proceeded with so far. It goes back to 2019. And then we'll go through the comparative analysis that Solinov conducted. And we can then switch to questions. And so I guess I could share my screen. I think it may, I don't know if it's going to be good for the recording, but I'll see, you'll let me know if you think it's best that I share my screen. So in April 2019, you know, council at this point is working on a strategic plan, and it's clear that all council members are concerned with our municipal performance when it comes to waste management. There's the Politique québécoise de gestion des matières organiques, so the Quebec policy on the management of organic waste. Objectives that at the time are for 2020. The the province wants municipalities to reduce by 60% the amount of organic waste it landfills. So council includes in that year in its strategic plan, it's a objective 7 that we want to we want to atteindre les cibles, so we want to hit the target when it comes to waste management in La Pêche, respecting provincial objectives. So in April 2019, we in order to determine what's the best way forward to achieve that objective, we reach out to Solinov, a leader in Quebec in waste management, in organic waste management. And we do so even though there's extensive literature and case studies on whether or not municipalities can get to these objectives with household composting alone. We decide to do so on one hand to have a solid document to refer to, and also because we recognize that La Pêche is a big municipality, like a rural community, so it adds a level of difficulty. So we give this mandate in 2019. So Solinov, they evaluate three scenarios. One where we do not do more than what we're currently doing. One where we go full speed into pushing for household composting, and one where we implement curbside composting. The report is published in 2019. And it's clear. The results, like the recommendations, are clear. Council is, and we'll go through the report together. Council is unanimously in favor of moving forward with the project. And in August 2019, we confirm our intention to work with MRC Vallée de la Gatineau, so our neighbor to the north. There are 17 even more rural communities to the north who are also working on this actively. So we confirm that we want to work with them in order to send our organic waste to Casa Bazois. In just a moment, my oldest dog is Boo Boo. Is crying. So that's in August 2019. So we say there's clearly a synergy that's possible given that Casa Bazois is already composting septic waste, but given that the MRC Vallée de la Gatineau is working toward implementing in numerous of its municipalities curbside pickup and extending their operations in Casa Bazois. So we say, as did Chelsea and Cantley and Pontiac in our MRC, we are interested in working with you. So there's we start publishing information, throughout the process in L'Info La Pêche, and on our website about what the municipality is every step the municipality is going through. And then we go to March 2020. We mandate l'Union des municipalités du Québec to include, like we asked them to include us into a to include us into a group, achat regroupé, so to purchase with other municipalities in order to have like better pricing, to include us in the following achat regroupé for composting bins. That's in March 2020. We published this in the Info La Pêche of March 2020 as well. In June 2020, we move ahead with the pouring bylaw for the composting bins. And know that because we're working with MRC Vallée de la Gatineau and a group of municipalities, we are basically asking the MRC Vallée de la Gatineau to include us into their applications to the PTMOBC, a provincial program that subsidizes both composting facilities, but the purchase of composting bins for municipalities that put in place curbside pickup for more than 70% of their households and buildings, basically. Yeah. And we, based on the comparative analysis that Solinov conducted in 2019, we take that comparative analysis and we mandate Solinov to apply to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities on funding to have Solinov accompany us throughout the implementation. And we, luckily and happily, we received $40,000 from Federation of Canadian Municipalities to have this expert, Solinov, accompanying us throughout the process. So working with our regional partners, helping us, modify our, they will help us modify our next contract for waste collection, waste recycling, and curbside pickup for compost. So that's good news. Like basically, we recognize that Solinov has particular expertise and will help us through this process. And that's where we are now. We've published in August 2020. In August 2019, we've published a report, and we can now switch to the report if you want. I don't know. By a quick, so my first question to you would be: were you familiar at this point with the different processes, like the different steps? No, or have you read the report that we've published on our website? Okay, and do you read L'Info La Pêche? Okay. Because there's been, throughout the process, articles in L'Info La Pêche. It's, I think it's always the case that we try our best to, send out information, but we recognize that people are busy, and not everyone has the time to read the Info La Pêche. So I understand, it's always going to be the case. Like we can do as much communication as we want. There's, I think there's always room to do more, or there's always going to be a case where someone is simply not able to consume that information. So let me share my screen and just a moment. There you go. All right. Okay. So what we've published on our website is a summary, a 10-page summary of the greater report that was produced by Solinov. And again, today we're having this conversation because I understand that there's some questions, members of the committee have questions about what we're doing, but know that there will be more extensive information sessions where we could go deeper into the report and the science behind the report if people are interested with Solinov. And let me go. So this is basically a timeline. At the time of the report, the first parts of the report are for people who would never have read or know much about composting and the greater provincial situation when it comes to provincial objectives and all that. So the report is good because it informs someone who would be completely new to the subject. But what's important for council again is that the report is a comparative analysis on a status quo, a full-on move toward like a household composting. So that's like option 1.1, and then there's option 1.2 where we do curbside pickup. And again, this is all information about composting in general, but I want to go to the let's start here. So again, A0 here is status quo. We let compost enthusiasts like myself do composting and get a compost bin if they want, and we don't do much more. Approach 1 or A1 is where we adopt bylaws and we really force people to compost, and approach 2 is where we do our neighbors to the north end implement curbside pickup, and neighbors in the MSA like Cantley and Chelsea I've done so far. You should know that if you look at approach A2 here, and I don't know if you can see my mouse. You can see. Okay, so here we're referring to the transit center, like it's in La Pêche. So know that all municipalities in MRC des Collines, for their solid waste, for their waste, municipalities will drive to it's close to the border between the 307 and the 366, like so close to the border between La Pêche, Cantlay, and Val-des-Monts. Pick up, what do you call it? Camion de poubelle, like the garbage trucks will go there, dump into a 50 feet trailer, and that trailer goes to La Chute. So sadly, Outaouais, we do not have a regional solution for waste. We have to export our waste to La Chute, and it's true in Maniwaki, and it's true in Grand Remous even. So it's 154 kilometers for us. If we then take organic waste out of that, we then send it, instead of sending it to the centre de transbordement, like our transit center, we send it directly to Casabazo, and that's 58 kilometers. Now, what they've done is, like, of course, we're not interested in the status quo, because clearly we're not meeting our targets. What we're interested in is, meeting our targets, either with, again, a full-fledged household composting or that curbside pickup. Then they start comparing the two approaches. They look at case studies, Val-des-Monts, Ange Gardien, but other municipalities in the province. And then they look at approach number two. Like, I think at the time there were more than 300 municipalities that had implemented what we call third way pickup, the curbside composting pickup. These are estimates based on quantities from 2018. They're comparing approche numéro 1, option 1 and option 2, based on the 2,800 tons of waste that we produce yearly. How much can we extract from? How much organic waste can we extract? And you can see, it is estimated that we can extract 840 tons out of our total waste generation, as opposed to 170 with household composting. And I understand that people have been concerned with greenhouse gas, because yes, when you're doing curbside, some people think that you're able to maintain the total number of collections that take place yearly, but no, there is an increase, right? There is an increase in the number of collections, that happen in the year. But of course, we're looking globally at the greenhouse gas emissions, right? So we have to take into consideration the landfilling, so if you and the distance to the landfill as opposed to the distance to the composting facilities. And as it is written in note number 3 here, this includes transport and landfill of waste, and transport and composting of organic materials. So what they say here is that, and again, economically, chances are for La Pêche, there's not going to be a big distinction between the two approaches. As it's known that there's always an increase, like an immediate increase in the total cost of waste management when you're in the following years, when you're implementing curbside pickup. But in the following years, what you see is an overall decrease, and you're also getting more subsidies from the province when your performance improves. And what was really interesting for council is that, while there's no great economic benefit to curbside pickup, there is 3 times more greenhouse gas emission reduction with curbside pickup than there would be with household composting, which may be counterintuitive to some, but again, there's strong scientific evidence for that in case studies over case studies. And then, so this is basically a table that compares the different advantages and where approach number 2 is overall a better option for La Pêche. So anyway, Solinov comes up with the recommendation, which again led to the municipality opting for scenario number 2 and going through every step I've described earlier afterwards. So the challenge that we have now in 2021 is to basically do all the steps required, before the end of our current collection, like our garbage collection contract that ends December 31st, implementing the different steps and doing tons of information sessions, sending a lot of information out, because while some people are quite familiar with composting, and are sensible to the issue and are great believers in the importance of our like for communities to stop landfilling organic waste, as is the case with recycling, or as was the case when recycling was implemented, some people are not so inclined. So I think that concludes, I'd say, the overview, and I'm happy to take questions. And again, I won't go into great details, because I do not work for Solinov, and there will be other occasions to ask more specific questions to Solinov throughout the coming months. Stop sharing that, and we could go back to the report if you want throughout the Q&A.
Okay, thanks very much. Is there anyone who has questions immediately? If not, I have a bunch that have come in via email. Maybe we could start with one of those. And if you do have a question, you don't need to type your entire question. You can just type your interest in the chat so that we don't have people talking over each other. So Karen Lau, she was not able to be present. This is a message from her. She says, please follow Val-des-Monts' lead and encourage composting on site. This is a huge and mainly rural and forested municipality. Sending trucks to pick up compost is ridiculous and bad for the environment. The only winner is the trucking company. As a seasonal owner, I am already paying for garbage and recycling that I do not need. As per other jurisdictions, if this goes ahead, the unnecessary roadside compost pickup idea should be an opt-out for those who do not need it. I compost already and don't produce any garbage at my cabin. The levy system unfairly increased my taxes by almost 40% last year. Another ongoing expense and forced levy in this municipality is wrong and unneeded. Composting education and providing free or subsidized units is the first step of this. This is really about the environment. So do you want to respond to that, Guillaume?
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing different, in that perspective, I'm hearing different things. On one hand, that notion that somehow there's no equation between the performance of curbside pickup in the rural context, which is not the case, and again, there's evidence for that. And this is not coming out of the blue. We're working with even more rural communities, smaller communities that have lower population densities up north in this great regional projet synergique, like synergy, and then yes, I understand that we have a tendency to sort of atomize or individualize, the impact of something like that on people who have great habits. Some people in our community and in many different communities in Quebec generate very little waste, have really great habits, etc. But as a governing board, we need to take into consideration the greater, the whole, the entire population and our overall performance. And again, if you want to have an impact, landfill less organic waste, generate less greenhouse gas emissions, the way to do that immediately is to implement curbside pickup. So I understand the frustrations, because some people do very well. I'm hearing of various initiatives. Municipalities are sort of it's called they're really, there's a greater link between how much waste people generate and how much they pay for that service. There are different technologies that exist now, something to be considered. But again, a tariff is is based on your ability to use a service, not whether or not you're using that service. And that's what community is. We improve roads that some people never use. We have facilities that some people never use. That's just how it is when you live in a community. Like it's.
So Guillaume, it sounds like, in response to that question, it sounds like you're saying that an opt-out is not an option that's feasible or desirable in this circumstance.
No, that's correct. I don't personally believe so. Yeah.
Okay. On the list of chats over here, the first person who asked a question, aside from a bunch of people who thank you for your presentation, is Jane Barton. When would the new bins be expected to come to us, and how much will it cost? Do you have an answer to that?
Yeah. So. We may or may not. So the expense for the bin is $256,000. As was reported in the minutes. And this is how much it costs for working with the Union des municipalités du Québec. We have not yet determined. Like council have not yet decided how we will be charging citizens. We may. Again, through subsidies, like we may be able to cover the bulk of that cost. We may choose to pay it through general taxation, so that typically general taxation is considered a more progressive way, to pay for expenses, as opposed to like a flat rate regardless of people's property value. Council has not decided on that yet. But as for the data delivery. Our objective, of course, is to, there are many moving pieces. Casa Bazois is, I believe, currently expanding their platform in order to expand their operations. Our contract ends December 31st. So we're hoping that somewhere in the fall or early winter of 2020, we deliver the bins.
All right, so the next question is from Jill Watkins. Jill, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Okay, thanks. So I actually have sort of two questions, if I can sneak in a second one. The first one is, as a scientist, I was quite interested in reading that Solinov summary. I was wondering if the full report can be available publicly, because I find that the estimate of under option one, only 170 tons per year could be composted by home composting, rising to 840 is very interesting. And I'm wondering if that includes the commercial things like bones. I'd like to know a bit more about how they come up with that. And similarly, the greenhouse gas emissions being lower for curbside pickup, even taking into account all the trucking and so on. I find that also a very interesting finding, which I'd like to dig into in more detail. So if the report's available, that'd be super. And then my second question is quick, and I was just wondering, the material after it's composted in Casa Bazois, what happens to it? Would it be available for sale or for distribution, or how is that used? Because that to me would be an advantage over it. A lot of this material just going to landfill and basically becoming just a big, it gets lost.
So thank you, Jill. To your first question, yes, absolutely. I don't see any reason why the full report shouldn't be available. And again, I think there will be information session with Solinov where we could go further into details. How they come up with these numbers. And again, at this point, there are hundreds of municipalities in Quebec that are doing curbside pickup, and many municipalities that have tried household composting. So there's a lot of data on that. And cases, you have cases of municipalities that went very far into household composting to recognize at some point that the numbers were simply not there, and then implemented curbside pickup. So I'm sure, yes, we can make the report available, and we can have moments with representatives from Solinov to look further into the numbers. I don't know when this will happen, but it will happen in 2020. To your second question, I'm sorry, just remind me.
Use of the composted material in Casa Bazois.
Yes.
Is it, was it used, or it just sits there?
Oh, no. Okay, so yes. I don't know if you've seen how composting operations work. If you ever have a chance to go through Mont-Laurier, I find they're amazing in how they perform, and they do to give you an example, like Mont-Laurier, you know Aumont, my parents are in Aumont. And Lac Quinn, on one side is Aumont, on the other side is Mont-Laurier. And Mont-Laurier, Régie intermunicipale des déchets de la Lièvre, I believe, they do the three pickups, you know. So they drive to, you know, Val-Limoges, basically, and down Aumont. They have to go through this huge path on, like they change MRC, basically, to go to Lac Quinn to get this waste, because this is how they're doing it. And their operations are just, if you visit they have a landfill in 2 kilometers away from the city core in Mont-Laurier. No smell, you know, super performance. And yes, citizens can go to Mont-Laurier to get compost for themselves. My point is that in an operation like that, there's a lot of inputs and has to be a lot of outputs. You cannot store all of that compost. So yes, and the question has already been raised by other municipalities and MRC des Collines that will eventually work with Casabazois. I think of our farmers, for example. All of this organic, all of this compost will come back to our community and can be used by our farmers, our community members. I wonder what kind of markets there will be for typically what comes out to be a grade A composting or amendment. Typically, sometimes facilities are able to simply they give it away, you know. So I mean, farmers will have to pay only, for example, the cost of trucking. Sometimes, given the market, they're able to sell the compost to a certain price to offset the cost of the operations. But what I'm told is that we are currently working with the MRC Vallée de la Gatineau. The MRC des Collines is working on the protocole d'entente, understanding, like the agreement, basically. And yes, it's important for our communities to receive the, you know, however many tons of compost we generate to get it back into the community.
So Guillaume, that relates to another question I received from Meredith Brown, and she's asking what grade it will be and whether it will be given away or sold. So it sounds like you're saying it will be grade A and it will be returned freely to residents. Is that correct?
No, I said I said that it's possible that such, you know, when you're composting or household composting, you know, depending on people's practices, depending on what the facility allows citizens to put in their bins, you can often get to a grade A. I don't know, like, regardless of what you typically get, every time a facility produce a compost pile, like before it goes out, they have to test it, you know. So typically with household residual organic waste, you're able to produce a grade A compost. And yes, again, it's our intention to have this compost returned to our communities
for free, without a cost.
Well, that'd be ideal. Yeah, no, of course, and again, that's in the agreement. You know, in order for everyone to, like, it wouldn't be. I don't think it would be economically sound for us to have to then, you know, pay for that compost. Again, typically, I wouldn't be surprised if the shipping costs had to be incurred. I don't know exactly what kind of agreement we'll get to, but
okay. The next question is from Bettina.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having the meeting. From what I understand, what you're saying is that one of the big benefits of having the pickup would be that all those who don't currently compost, or all the institutions, restaurants, everyone else would be getting this service provided, which is probably somewhat of the increase of the vast increase in amount of compost that could be collected versus what one can do in one's backyard. And then the greenhouse gas reduction, not driving as many loads of garbage to Lachute, is one of the big differences, it sounds like, right? So that sounds really good in terms of the concerns we had about having more trucks picking up from the door, but there's less trucks hopefully going a longer distance. Anyway, I'm excited about it because I do composting, but not like bones and all that other stuff, and that wouldn't be going in my garbage bin. So it's kind of exciting. I'm just curious with this sort of opt-out option. I'm trying to understand what people are asking. Are they asking about opting out from the extra tax costs it'll have for us, or are they saying they don't want to be forced to compost in the brown bin? Because I may like to continue composting in my garden, the stuff that I currently put in there, but I would love to have that option available for all the stuff that I don't put in my garden bin, like the bones and that. I don't use it because of the animals, more animals it'll attract. And so I'm just curious whether we'll be required to use the brown bin, whether we get it no matter what. I mean, I will want it, but just in general, for those who maybe really feel like they don't need it, are they going to get it whether they want it or not? The way we got our green and blue bins, kind of, we just got them delivered.
Right. Well, so I believe that's correct. That, people will receive a brown bin and will, use it. Like, of course, we want people to stop putting organic waste in garbage. But I myself will continue composting. We have a small greenhouse. We have garden patches. We're very happy to compost. I personally like the 2-bin approach. I have an active bin going, and then I have a dormant bin where it's like the slower composting process is happening. So I'll probably, I've had conversations with like the one you raised with people who work in the field. People will be able to change their approach to modulate how they compost. People who, of course, I will continue composting. Some people would say, well, now I'm going to put my cat litter in the bin, because we're to the question that Jill raised earlier, the performance of industrial composting, you reach higher temperatures, you destroy pathogens, proteins that are very dangerous, like for people's health, if it's not, so you can put things in the brown bin that you cannot put in your household compost. So for example, you could have, like, if you really want to reduce how much you throw out, like every paper product, cardboard, dirty cardboard product, cat litter, dog feces, if they're not in a plastic bag, bones, etc., can go into the compost bin. Imagine like your bathroom garbage can, dirty Kleenexes, any paper product that normally would end up with if you like, for example, remove your dental floss, if we want to go very deep into details, like any paper product that your house generates that you couldn't normally put in the recycling bin can then go into the brown bin. So eventually people can use it, compost enthusiasts like myself can use it the way they see fit. If you have, like, for example, a big barbecue, it generates a way more organic matter than you would normally be comfortable putting in your compost bin. If you're very sick one winter and you don't have the energy to do it, like, this is how I think of it. So I don't, again, council will have to decide, but I don't see a viable opting out solution. I think it's a community issue. And of course, like anything else, some people are, great ambassadors for, for good habits, and some people struggle. We have to, face that problem as a community, and so this is the best answer I have. It's, as any tariffed service, you use it the way you use it. If you don't use it at all, well, that's, it's still, you're still able to use it, you see.
So just to clarify, that would mean everyone would get the brown bin just like everyone got their blue bin, but right. They're not going to be monitored as to whether they're using it or not? Well, because I've heard that occurs in some places, and I guess I'm not concerned about it, but it sounds like that might be something people are concerned about.
Right. Well, what you'd monitor, what you'd want to monitor is what people are putting in their garbage. You want to see that organic waste, a reduction in how much organic waste is being landfilled. So it's one thing for people to, for gardeners to compost and generate little to no organic waste. That's okay. But if that's okay if they're not putting everything in the in the garbage bin, in the green bin. So we'd have to monitor, and do a lot of information session and, sensibilisation in order for people to adopt this new habit. And it's not, look, I think of, when I think of waste management, community waste management, I think of us today, like there's a normal curve, right? And compost enthusiasts and people like zero waste ambassadors, you know, they're in one end of this normal curve. You know, they're doing a great job reducing their footprint. There's the other end of that normal curve where people are still not recycling, for example, you know, or paying little attention to what they send to Tricentris, you know. So I can, like, yes, there are, you know, sometimes you can imagine what our sorting facility in Gatineau, Tricentris, you know, the recycling facility, what kind of stuff they get, because people are still struggling with that notion of recycling. So, but there's, you know, in the middle of this curve, there's the bulk of us who will see that service as, oh, finally, you know, like I can do that. I can take all of that organic waste and put it in that brown bin. That's something that I can easily fit into my schedule, my habits, my, you know. So this is why it works. This is why Solinov, you know, when they do the analysis, and again throughout Quebec and across the world, like, this is why it works, because it facilitates, you know, it makes it easier for people.
So Guillaume, on that note, would another approach be to simply charge people for garbage as opposed to monitoring what they're putting in their composting bin?
Look, I know that, you know, there are various models out there. You know, I think I don't know if it's in Hong Kong or Taiwan, where you look at how countries manage their waste production and sort of atomize again, or highly individualize, you know, how it's done, and you know, basically there's a huge correlation between how much you pay for it, how much you generate. Yes, there are ways to do that, technologies that will weigh, for example, your garbage bin, or a limited number of garbage bags. You know, there are ways to do that. I don't know. We have not yet looked at those, and then there are always ethical questions that are coming up. For example, you know, families. You know, like a big family. We have a family. I don't know if you know, but we have a family of 10 kids, like in Saint-Cécile de Macham. You know. So there's a great spectrum of how much waste people generate and why, and yes, you can sort of highly manage that the billing of of this service, but typically it's not an approach that's taken, because it has its limits. So I don't. I personally don't see a great benefit in looking further into this method or this approach. If people are interested in it, they want to research it, send us ideas. We could look at them, but it's more the exception to the rule.
I have a text here from Karen Bays saying the science is clear that we need more waste diverted to compost and not added to the landfill. But getting people to change behavior is an issue. I do not believe that giving people a brown bin will help many people get into the composting cycle. What has been the experience in Chelsea? Do you know, Guillaume, what's been the experience in Chelsea?
I mean, we're La Pêche Media, but I'm sure, you're La Pêche Media, but you could ask Mrs. Green. I'm not sure how the experience has been. I also recognize that it's been very little time. Think of how recycling improved and evolved throughout the years. So I understand Mrs. Bay's point. Over what we want as a species, I guess, is to reduce the waste we generate, or the amount, our consumption habits. Ultimately, I'm a pragmatic person. I look at the constraints of reality. I look at the numbers. I look at social behaviors. You have to take all of that into account and make the best decisions based on the information that you have. So yes, I know that ideally it may not sound like the best way forward, but immediately, given what we know, given the circumstances in which we are, it's the most pragmatic approach and the most efficient approach. I don't know if I responded correctly to her question. If it's not the case, just tell me again. Maybe I missed something. But
Karen, was that fine? I believe Karen's on the call here. Yeah, she's muted and video.
Yeah, that was that answers it. I drive through Chelsea once in a while when it's brown bin day, and I drive by more houses without a brown bin out. And I understand behavior change is hard to achieve, and you've got to start somewhere. But I don't know that giving people a plastic bin here in the country with us not having a dense population. And I was also wondering, would the bins accept diapers? Because that might motivate people.
So, to my knowledge, no. And we'll have to, like, these are good questions. It's all based on the facilities in Casabasua. So, having visited the Moose Creek facility, you know, I think it's on the 417, right? They get organic waste from York County. Is that correct? Like in Toronto? Like, so that's mind-boggling, but right, Toronto sends like tons and tons and tons, like thousands of tons of organic waste to Eastern Ontario. And with the very advanced facilities, you're able to take in diapers and all, you know, that kind of waste. But you're talking about technologies that are really good at extracting plastic fibers, and you know, you have covered compost piles, extremely high heat, and I think that ultimately you end up with compost that has the quality that you'd expect when you allow for this kind of inputs, right? So I do not believe that Casabasua is equipped to take in garbage, not garbage, diapers. But we could look at these questions, like these technical questions with Solinov or representatives from the MRC Vallée de la Gatineau. And again, so I see Ahimsa, so it's, your name escapes me.
Ahimsa Eco Solutions, looks like.
Yeah, Wesley, right. Having visited the Moose Creek, so I don't know the details, but I was told at the time that York was contracting to Moose Creek. So I don't know about Toronto proper, but I know that I think York is in the suburbs of Toronto. They were sending waste to Moose Creek. It may have changed. I think it maybe had been like early on, you know, when it was still relatively new in some greater suburbs of Toronto, and there was only so much capacity regionally to treat all of that organic waste. It may not be the case today, but.
Guillaume, there's a second question from Ahimsa Eco Solutions. Maybe you want to answer that, and then we can go to Nancy, who'd like to ask a couple questions in person. So you can read it yourself. If free of plastic bits, example, prohibiting organic waste being placed in plastic bags, the demand will be quite high. The City of Toronto offers their compost free to residents, but with a limit of 1 cubic meter per person, looks like. Okay, so that's not really a question, it's more of a comment. Okay.
I was waiting for the question mark, like, you know, but thank you for the information. Gillian, are you muted? Well, you are muted.
I was going to say, Nancy, do you want to unmute yourself? It's your turn.
Okay.
Nancy Hooker, I can unmute. I don't know if she took a break. Maybe we'll come back to her.
Sorry, I'm here.
Right.
My unmute button wasn't working. Sorry, now it is. Sorry for the delay. I'm one of the people who is concerned about the greenhouse gases being produced with all the extra trucks driving around picking up the compost. I mean, I'm a big supporter of composting. I think that's the way we all need to go in one way, shape, or form. But from what I understand, and I think Bettina, maybe, if I'm saying your name right, had this clarified too, that because we're hauling less garbage, there will be a CO2 reduction. Is that what I understood?
Yeah, they take into consideration trucking, but then, you know, methane coming out of landfilled organic waste, they take into consideration, again, they look at many case studies. While people compost, there are still, in some cases, or in many cases, sadly, small methane facilities in people's backyard, And I must admit, I'm guilty of that. Sometimes I'm not as on the ball when it comes to my aeration. So if you take all the pieces of the puzzle, what they estimate is a 3-fold reduction in greenhouse gases.
So
Yeah.
That leads me to something though, then that kind of hit me in the face then, in that the much bigger question here is not just composting. And I think composting is important to do to help tackle this problem. But really the big problem is waste production that we can't compost, that is being hauled to places like Lachute and going into the ground. And maybe I'm jumping ahead, but you said you're not willing to go to limiting people's garbage production. But I don't know, I'm thinking it's getting to be the time where governments do need to step up and start leading in that direction and gently somehow, I don't want to say requiring, but something to do so people produce less garbage, because the hauling of the garbage into the land is a big part of the problem. So I don't know, maybe that's a discussion for another day, but I think that needs to be looked at. And I want to know if this Solinov is going to be looking at that as well. And if so, to me, it was sad when everybody had to go out and get those big, huge plastic garbage bins, because it just kind of gave a license to people, I think, to produce a lot of garbage. I went and bought, Nick and I are partners, Nick was here, and we went and bought a little brown bin that Gatineau uses for composting, and we use it for garbage because the trucks can still pick it up. So I'm just thinking maybe that's another thing to talk about, is to get together and formulate a waste reduction overall, including composting. But I think it needs to be just seen as just one part of the puzzle, and we need to look at the whole puzzle.
I agree with you. My family, we generate, all things considered, what I find to be little waste. There are many weeks of the year where we could just not bring our bin to the side and it would be fine. It's like typically a quarter full, with some peaks during the year. So two things. Outaouais, if you've followed regional politics for, I guess, 2 decades now, people who have know that Outaouais, there's a bit of a, we've looked at the numbers for La Pêche to go to Lachute. Imagine if you're Maniwaki, I recall, I've worked at MRC Vallée de la Gatineau, it's 270 kilometers to Lachute, and then back it's 540.
Yeah.
Outaouais, there's a void, and now Polytechnique with the various MRCs and that are working are doing this big analysis to determine what would be the best course of action for Outaouais when it comes to I'd say taking responsibility or figuring out its waste management regionally, as opposed to exporting it to Argenteuil. And so on one hand, we need a regional solution. Is it a solution that could include Ottawa? There are legal, in waste management, the solution is always volume. So Outaouais alone, for example, energy to waste, waste to energy generation type of approach, we probably generate too little, to make it financially feasible. If we looked at the greater Outaouais, maybe it's possible. I don't know. There are ongoing studies, and to your question, or to Nancy's question about waste reduction, you're seeing some leadership happen, and we need to pay attention. In Gatineau, they're limiting the number of bags that people have to buy extra bags at a certain cost. And it's kind of I think of Gatineau's approach as the latest federal carbon tax, right? The extra bags may not be that costly, but you have to go through the process of purchasing that extra bag. And so yes, we want people to reduce how much waste they generate. And again, this kind of behavioral change takes time. What to your remark about, the feeling you had when you received that big bin, it boils down to, well, when we are putting, when they were looking at the time of how much people generated, they had to recognize that immediately, people needed this, like they had to go with like the needs of the time, like how much waste do people generate, so and they need to have an approach that will address this immediate reality. But like you, I hope that we can progressively reduce how much people generate. And
Guillaume, I don't want to, I hate to interrupt you. We have people who are having to start to leave the meeting because it's 3 o'clock now. And there are 6 more questions and comments in the chat. So maybe you could just go through those quickly and try to address everyone who has written something there, if you could.
Can you help me locate?
Yeah, right, sure. So right now, we are up to, are we up to Andrew Ryan? Is that possible? Yeah, I think we're up to Andrew Ryan. It's your turn, Andrew. Are you here still? I don't know if Andrew had to go. Oh, no, Andrew, you're there. Or he took a break.
Thanks. Yeah, it's just on my phone. Thanks for hosting, Guillaume. It's just more of a question around information, because I was lucky. I happened to be at one of the meetings on the council meetings where you guys talked about this, and kind of removed my skepticism about composting. I was wondering if you believe the municipalities should maybe work on their communication more, because I think you guys have all the information, and that maybe it just wasn't communicated in the right way. Info la Pêche is great. Council meetings are great if you have the privilege to attend, like some of us. But I'm wondering if a move to an email list or investing in better communications with a lot of changes coming would be a good move. Just a question. Thanks.
I'm sorry that we have 2 new puppies and now they're waking up and they're yappy. So I hope thank you for your question, Andrew. Yeah, I started saying it's definitely a challenge because, and I've recently looked when I saw, like, people were, started telling me about the conversation around composting, and I recognize that it appeared like it was a surprise for many, and that's okay. Like, people have busy lives and do not necessarily have the time to consume all we put out there. At this point, we have, an application, we have an email list, we have l'info de la pêche, we have the website, Facebook. We have counselors who are quick at putting information out following council meetings, for example. You can, council meetings are video that are filmed and put on the website. But nonetheless, it will remain the case that people will, learn afterwards of decisions that are made, and that's always going to be the case. I've strived in the last years to overall improve our community, like our performance. I think we're also putting more information out there. Once people is aware of a new project or a particular development, I believe they're able to get information from the website.
Guillaume, would it be possible to request that the Study Nav report be translated into English? Because they actually are a bilingual organization, right?
Right. Yes. I mean, yes. Like, to your question, like, specifically, is it possible could someone request that? Yes. I think it will become relevant to translate it at this point, given this latest interest, and it's not yet translated, but we could come up with a synthesis, like a summary, that's translated. Absolutely. I think that we have a lot of work ahead of us, in order to, again, continue informing people about the the new this new composting pickup. Let me tell you an anecdote. I remember I'm with my colleague Mrs. Green and Mrs. Brunette in Cantley and Mrs. Labadie, and they decided at some point that we're doing this. We're implementing curbside pickup, and I saluted at the time their enthusiasm. But having worked in the field, I thought, are you ready? Are you ready to do this? You know, since both Cantley and Chelsea had to they had to basically change the facility that they're dealing with because Casabasso was not ready. There were issues with the contracting process. It was going to be transported to Portage du Fort, I believe. Anyway, there had some hiccups, but overall, now it's fine. It's happening. They're doing it. It's going well, and it's going to keep improving. I thought at the time, let's take a step back and make sure we are doing this right. And this is when we started in 2019 with that report, and this extensive process where we're accompanied by professionals in order to make this as seamless as possible. And in order to give people more time to take it in, starting in 2019 until the time where it happens in 2010 or 21. And, maybe naive of me now I recognize now that, we still have a lot of work to do because regardless of how much, what we do and how much we put out there, there's, it's repetition, more information session will be needed. That's just, I guess, a lesson learned for me. So basically, I felt quite proud and comforted that we were taking these steps and this meticulous approach. But it's still, there's still, of course, many challenges ahead. I don't know if I answered that correctly, Andrew.
I'm a little bit conscious about the time here. So there were a couple of comments from Jane Barton that didn't get addressed, but I believe she's no longer on the call. And she just suggested the compost material would be a great thing for everyone to have access to, not just farmers. And also that in some municipalities, used furniture, household items, etc., are saved and made available for free to people who choose to take them home. This is a great way to reduce waste. So it seems like there's already a lot of that going on in Wastefield, various people offering things for free to each other. Right. I don't know if that's something that the municipality wants to take on as a project somehow.
Just a moment. There's this alarm ringing. Just a moment.
Okay. When Guillaume comes back, Stuart, you've had a question for a while, so you'll be next. I hope I'm not missing anyone here. There are a lot of people who put in comments, but I'm not sure if you wanted Guillaume to address your comments or not.
I'd say, if I may, overall, when it comes to waste management, and in waste management, you can include hazardous waste, what's called encombrant, so large items. We don't have an eco center. MSC, Décolline, altogether, we when it comes to waste management, we lack particular services or facilities. The good news is that we now have someone who's solely focused on waste management and environment at the regional level, and as well at the municipal level, we have like a master's in environment who's among the various I'd say among its very different responsibilities, there's our municipal waste management he's taking over, he's responsible for. So I think that yes, we have a lot to do, and there are great examples in other municipalities of ways to be it recycle clothing, old furniture. There are many examples. We have a long way to go.
So just before we get to Stuart, ça va, Guillaume? Okay, he's got something going on there. Well, I'll take the opportunity to mention that Guillaume texted me. Someone wanted to clarify whether CAS is in fact aerobic or anaerobic, and Guillaume answered that it is aerobic composting taking place over there for the person who asked that question. Is it all right? Guillaume, are you still able to participate?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Just a bit of a... so, Stuart, you have questions. Is that correct?
No worries. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, just make sure that it seems that the difference between the two is it's a difference between a lot of people doing a small bit compared to a handful of people, say, I'm assuming the 15 other people in this call who are spending an hour on a Friday talking about composting are pretty good at composting, and you might do a lot of it. But if you get a lot of people to do a small bit, that is a whole lot more. And that's probably, I think, where those numbers are coming from. Is that sort of, do I have the grasp of that right?
It's a numbers game. Like you're right. You know, and again, it's like there's the ideal, you know, there's the ideal scenario, there's the ideal world, and then there's the pragmatic, real world constraints that I've mentioned earlier. And the approach we are favoring is the one that addresses this reality and the fact that for many people, this will be the best way forward. You know, this is how they will reduce how much organic waste they generate, and eventually we landfill. No, yeah.
There's a comment from Wesley that another option would be offering different sized garbage bins and rewarding those who choose the smallest bin, or offering a discount for those who choose the smallest bin. This relates to a question I received from Robert Mueller about sharing bins or declining bins. Is that something that the municipality has thought about? And he's also asking about fines for people who leave their bins out on the road. Have you given any consideration to how to manage those bins, or maybe reduce the size of them?
In the meeting yesterday, I learned that in L'Ange Gardien they have a $250, I believe it's $250 gift certificate or tax rebate for people who own electric vehicles. You know, so there are many examples out there of municipalities taking actions to, I'd say, encourage, you know, good life habits, and this, you know, I guess it's a question of priorities. It's a question of capacity. I'm open to these ideas. You know, I think it all boils down to management. When you're managing exceptions, you know, when you're managing these, like, you know, a number of different approaches, it just takes more time. I think I'm open to look at very, you know, different ideas. I know, for example, that you have cottage owners in La Pêche that live on private road, and they all put their bins in one particular location, for example. You know, so there may be many opportunities to I'd say to have like specific approaches in specific circumstances. It's just a question of capacity, and you know, it's like you have to weigh in the benefits versus the cost or the time it takes, right? Like it's just a question of capacity.
So if no one has any other questions, I have one final email question. It's from Frances Anderson, and she says, I'm wondering if there could be somewhere to bring compost set up and perhaps manned by volunteers, for example, at the weekly farmers market on Saturdays, for part-time residents or seniors who don't produce much compost material or can't wield another garbage bin. Does that seem realistic to you, Guillaume?
Just to be sure I understood, like for someone to be able to bring organic materials in a location for it to be transported or for it to be composted?
She's asking about bringing compost somewhere, maybe set up at the farmers market on Saturdays. And I think she's thinking about people who could bring a small amount of compost to contribute to a larger bin, as opposed to having her own large bin, which she doesn't want to be moving around. That's what it sounds like. It gets back to the idea of sharing bins or opting out of bins.
So what I guess confused me is this notion of compost like this. So to put it out there, compost is like the final product. You know, organic waste is the input, right? So to have locations where people can put organic waste, I think there, you know, I believe there are limits to. There are limits. I'll give you an example. Like, you can only, on a private household, without requiring an environmental certificate from the province, you can, I believe, only compost 4 meter cubes. You know, if it goes beyond that, you need particular approvals, you know, because of the risks, right? And I think farmers can, and now I'm speaking from memory, like farmers can only compost like a certain amount on site as well. Would there be opportunities to have locations where people can bring organic waste for it to then be sent to Casaba as well, you know, as opposed to having their own bin? Maybe I'd have to, you know, I'd have to think of, like, people would have to give me like example scenarios. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I mean, neighbors could choose, for example, you know, that they'll only use one bin, you know, one brown bin. It's you know, it's enough for them. If it, but again, these are typically exceptions to the norm, you know, to the rule, you know, exceptions to the norm. Right?
Okay, so it's 3:15 and we have more and more people who are needing to go. How can people continue to be involved in this conversation, Guillaume? If people want to be involved and up to date, will you be putting out a detailed version of the Solinov report? Will there be a council meeting dedicated to this issue at which people can participate, or how can people continue to get involved in this issue?
Well, I mean, if people have questions between the information sessions that we'll do, you know, they're always welcome to send us questions or come to council every first Monday of the month at 7:30. But again, as I've said before, like we're in this year where we have to finalize all of that in order for its implementation by the end of early next year. So there will be information sessions, and we'll have to dedicate a lot of effort in communication. So there'll be more opportunities, and I'll be, you know, I'll be there, you know, with professionals, answering questions, you know, of course.
And once again, if people want to ask questions in English at those meetings, they're welcome to do so, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's, you know, I've in a recent interview, I've discussed why it is that right now we don't have a simultaneous translation, and I've received information. I don't know if you've read about what's happening with all the translators at the federal government right now, but I invite you to read about the increased rate of work-related injuries that they're experiencing. In the meantime, I'll be happy to translate any information shared or, you know, questions asked during council meetings.
Okay, is there anyone who had any final questions or comments before we go? No. It's your last chance. All right, well, thank you very much, Guillaume. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and see you next time. Bye.
Merci tout le monde. À la prochaine. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Guillaume.
Thank you.
Much.
It's good to see you and hear you, Ruth. Take good care, everyone. Merci. Thank you for caring. Thank you for caring. Bye-bye.